I always go there. Always go to Winston Bailey because there is something just unique. The minute I hear him, I know that I am in Tobago. Sometimes the issue is just for recreation. Sometimes the issue is for very serious matters, as is our business this morning. At the end of the day, however, you are looking at the other part of the unitary state of Trinidad and Tobago. We are talking about Tobago. With us is Dr. Denise Tsoiafatt Angus. She's the PRO for the People's National Movement, an equally important medical school professor. She did that in Baltimore, and in Tobago, on the board of Tobago Regional Health Authority is the medical director, deputy chairman, and chairman. Also, in her current posting, is senior advisor to the Secretary of Health and Social Services. Dr. Tsoiafatt Angus, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. It's good to have you here. You have a number of hats that we find of great interest. Tobago is going to be our focus now, and I do want to go into the area of the of your position there. The question: the Tobago House of Assembly is saying that they are unable to pay their teachers because the financial disbursement from the central government for the last quarter has not been given to them. Thank you for being here, and address that if you will, please.
Okay. Good morning to Trinidad and Tobago.
And you will forgive me, Doctor. My co-host, of course, as you know, is Ms. Sharmain Baboolal.
Good morning, Ms. Baboolal.
Morning, ma'am. How are you?
Bishop. I am great, thank you.
Well, you're in a good place, physically. Yes.
Yes. The issue with the non-payment has been cleared up to some extent because the last quarter releases were sent to the Assembly so that we could facilitate that payment. However, I must put on record that it was sent late and it was not in keeping with the established rules where it has to come ahead of time and en bloc.
And that is precisely why I raised it with you, because I remember Senator Kojo raising that issue before it got to the crisis level. Then the money was in fact released from the central government, got to Tobago, but not given to you. This delay, what do you see it as? Just bureaucratic incompetence, or do you see something else with this?
Well, this is something we keep asking, whether it is intentional mischief through the Ministry of Tobago Development that is responsible for transmitting the funds in a timely manner to the Tobago House of Assembly, or is it gross incompetence at that level? Because this is not the first time we have had that challenge over the last 5 years, and it is something that we continue to agitate for change with.
Two different things we're looking at here. One is going to be the THA as they are performing for the people of Tobago, their representatives, how they're performing, and that relationship you have with Tobago and the central government. Speak to that relationship, please.
Well, you know, the central government, the relationship with the central government and the Tobago House of Assembly is governed by the Tobago House of Assembly Act. The latest act is Act 40 of 1996, and therefore that, you know, defines the relationship between us in terms of how we relate to each other, areas of responsibility directly under the Tobago House of Assembly, the authority, and that is listed out on the 5th schedule. And in other areas, there are direct responsibility of the central government under the 7th schedule, and then there are areas where, you know, there must be consultation and shared responsibility under the 6th schedule. But in every case, there has to be consultation with the Tobago House of Assembly. Now, over the last 5 years, that has really not worked out very well for us in terms of areas of responsibility of the central government that we consider were significantly neglected. You know, we keep talking about us increasing our tourism thrust in Tobago, but when you don't have an effective ferry service between Trinidad and Tobago and even up through the Eastern Caribbean, of course we're going to be stymied by that. When you talk about the inadequate infrastructural needs at our airport in Tobago, that it needs a total refurbishment, it needs expansion, and those needs were not met. When you talk about having a predictable service between Trinidad and Tobago, we do not have that. And in fact, Caribbean Airlines has not, in fact, they have failed in being able to deliver even a direct service between Tobago and the rest of the Caribbean. And that is where we have had to turn to alternative routes such as GOL, the flight from Brazil, and they have actually now met the needs of Tobago in terms of providing a direct service from Tobago to Barbados. So I think those are some of the areas. Of course, you know, they're also responsible for police stations, fire stations, putting down prisons and judges' quarters. These are significant areas where we have not been able to get them to put their attention to. We have also been significantly underfunded, where our housing program is under threat and our social programs are under threat. And what the Assembly has been able to achieve is to be able to utilize funds where we have intentionally attempted to save funds whenever we get our annual allocation in order to put aside for building houses and other developmental programs that we have and for the social programs. In fact, we came under heavy criticism by the one of the political parties, the forward for us actually having our social programs, the unemployment relief program and the CPEP program. And, you know, if we don't have these programs, when a country is going through a period of recession, and we recently looking at the global recession that we had, if you don't have these programs, you're in effect crippling your country. Because what you would have is more people on the breadline, and that leads to an increase in crime and other activities. And therefore, we would have had these social programs. But of course, with the underfunding from the government, we had to go in and ensure the protection of the hundreds of workers in these programs. Because with the monies that they gave us in the last allocation, we would only have been able to sustain that program up until December last year, which was the end of the first quarter.
Denise, you're saying this, and I'm coming.
I'm sorry, Dr. Denise Tsoiafatt Angus is our guest here this morning. We're talking about Tobago.
I'm sorry. Did you finish saying what you were saying? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. But I'm listening to this, the two sides of a story, three sometimes, mine, yours, and the truth sometimes, as people say. I'm listening to this against the backdrop of an interview. Our first interview that we had here on Tobago would have been with Crystalline Moore of the Tobago Forwards when she spoke about it. And she went and she came on to us after she had a news conference where she explained in great detail the state of the finances in terms of the audits from the Tobago House of Assembly, that a lot of funds is unaccounted for. A lot of funds are unaccounted for. So when we hear like a litany of woes coming from the Assembly saying, look, we don't have this, we don't have that, this isn't on time, and it also sounds the same all the time. You hear this all the time. These are the same issues we've been hearing for decades, you know.
Well,
how do we
take up that issue of the audit? Okay? And, you know, whereas audits in Trinidad are done on a sample basis, from my understanding of the chief administrator, who is the chief accounting officer in Tobago, audits are normally done in Trinidad on a sample basis. For some reason, audits in Tobago are done on a very detailed basis of the Tobago House of Assembly. And the chief administrator would have written a report to the chief secretary outlining the challenges of the Auditor General report. One of the areas he looked at is the fact that, take for instance, if we have 24 bank accounts, if one bank account, maybe with, say, $15,000, has not been put forward for the Auditor General to see, then the total amount in the 24 bank accounts is reported that they cannot be verified, even though they got 23 of them. Okay? So he had a problem with the type of reporting that was being done. But he also had a concern that the Auditor General was not using the financial rules of the current Tobago House of Assembly Act, and that he was using financial rules that were outdated and very much so. And those were the rules that he continued to apply. And therefore that, would have been a challenge for us in terms of how they assess the financial audits. For instance, they kept using the fact that the Assembly just had to deal with the well, I'll read it for you. He says that one of the findings at the time of the report was seen that the financial rules made under Section 52 of the THA Act were laid in Parliament. The 1990 THA financial rules remain in force and apply to the Assembly with regard to Section 78(1). The chief administrator is saying that the THA Act 1996 Section 52 provided for the Assembly to make such financial rules as are necessary for the proper management of its finances. Right? And the rules were made within 2 months of coming in, of the Act coming into force. The rules of 1997 and 2001, or the modified rules, in accordance with the substantial changes of the THA Act 40 of 1996. However, the position of the modified rules does not appear to satisfy the Auditor General, who continues to use the 1990 rules, not the representatives on the ground. And they have to have a special relationship and a willingness to collaborate with the members of the Tobago House of Assembly who have direct responsibility for a number of areas in terms of developing Tobago. And therefore, their role, if and when they are given the chance, that their role would be with an aligned central government in Trinidad of the People's National Movement, that they will be able to speak in Parliament on behalf of Tobago and Tobago's people's business. But further to that because they are colleagues, they would expect it to have more influence with their cabinet members in Trinidad in terms of furthering some of Tobago's needs and to be able to get them done. Again, significantly, the budgetary allocations, the autonomy issues for Tobago, and again, wherever there are areas of responsibility. But I have to go back because, if we begin to take care of the autonomy issues and give Tobago control to really take care of some of these things, like for instance, I go back to simple things like the bus service, then we would be able to make sure we meet the needs of the people. In fact, what we have had to do is to take some of our saved balances to now go out and buy 50 buses to put on the roads in Tobago because the bus service is so poor. So I think those are some of the areas that we promise Tobagonians, that should they choose our candidates, that it would lend itself to a certain level of predictability in furthering Tobago's development at this point.
And those candidates are Mr. Bishop for Tobago East, Ayanna Webster Roy, and Tobago West, Senator she was, and she's Shamfa Kajo. So it's a kind of woman slate in Tobago, because going up there in the midst of all of this, Tobago forwards would be Chrislyn Moore.
Right.
And then Vanilla Allen Toppin has been confirmed to defend her seat as well. So
neutralize the sex issue just by having all these candidates, and now we're going to focus just on the issues. Doctor, in conclusion, and we have 1 minute for this, let me ask of you, what is it? 70% of the people in Tobago are employed by the THA. That is a frightening amount of people being. We always know government is the employer of last, of last choice. But when you have 70% of the people in Tobago employed by the THA, does that not concern you, or rather, the fact that it speaks volumes as to the other parts of the economy in Tobago?
I think when we're putting numbers out there, we have to be mindful of the dating of the numbers. Mm-hmm. I know that would have been part of the CSO reports back in perhaps maybe 2 to 3 years ago. But all recent reports, the last quarter of last year, the CSO would have reported that those rates are down to 54%.
Okay.
Those rates are actually done, and the Honorable Secretary of Finance would have reported that in the last budget debate that we had a couple months ago.
And 54%, you would say,
that
is
down to 54%.
54% is more acceptable, you would say.
It is getting there. I mean, this the balancing out will not occur overnight, but we are finding that some persons are being retooled to go into different areas. We have a strong entrepreneurship program where we give grant funding and mentorship assistance to persons who want to get into some of businesses. And some of the businesses that we are seeing are using the fruits to make jams and jellies and juices, seasonings, draperies. We're getting into a lot of different areas. That is part of our thrust to diversify the economy. And again, this does not occur overnight. We continue to work with the people of Tobago in terms of training them and preparing them, developing the human capacity as much as we could, and therefore providing them with the platform of opportunity by giving them grants to be able to start opening their small businesses and, holding their hands through. They can develop from small into medium size into large, and that is going to take time.
Doctor, I fully understand that, and I also thank you for the amount of adjustments you've had to do to be with us this morning. It is truly appreciated. The PRO for the PNM in Tobago, and we discussed a number of issues. We are hoping that the elucidation you brought will help voters in Tobago when they go to the polls to vote in this general election. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this morning.
You're welcome.
And thank you. You have a wonderful day, ma'am.
All right, bye-bye.
It is.